stunning story out of Pennsylvania where the Supreme Court there has just thrown out thousands and thousands of juvenile convictions issued by a judge who's been caught up in a corruption scandal. His name is Judge Mark Ciavarella, and he has now admitted to accepting millions of dollars in kickbacks in exchange for sending kids to private detention centers. The court says that none of these young offenders basically got a fair hearing. Some of them weren't even allowed to have lawyers during their hearings. So what happens to them and what happens to these cases? Marcia Levick is here. She's Deputy Director and Chief Counsel at the Juvenile Law Center. She represents the juveniles in these cases. What's been the reaction, Marcia?
Well, the reaction across the board is really stunning. I think that both the families, the kids, and the community is overwhelmed by what is really an unprecedented result in an unprecedented case.
In terms of what happens then to these cases, I assume that we're talking about 6,500 cases, just so our viewers know, or thereabouts. I assume that a fair number of these kids were actually guilty in these cases. What happens to them? Do they get retried?
The vast majority of these kids, first of all, won't get retried. I wouldn't assume that so many of these kids were guilty. More than half of these kids appeared without lawyers. These were hearings that took place in about a minute and a half. The judge made summary, arbitrary decisions about these kids, and they were denied the most fundamental rights of due process. So these kids are really getting the opportunity to get their lives back on track and to erase what happened to them.
You're right. I guess we can't make any assumptions in this case because, as the court has said, there really was no fair system and no justice. I know that you're suing for damages. Who and what are you suing?
Well, we're suing the judges, and we're also suing the private provider who ran these facilities that gave the kickbacks to the judges. We are suing the developer of these facilities, the Luzerne County itself, for their conduct in this. So we are hoping to get compensation for these kids and families who, as I said, not only suffered violations of their due process rights, but many of these kids and families paid fines and restitution, really paid money back to the juvenile court as a result of being found delinquent. So we're hoping for a victory there as well.
Real quickly, I understand, though, that the judge and another one involved in this case, though, they've asked for immunity.
The judges have asked for immunity, and we think that this is, again, just an extraordinary situation where you have judges really acting outside the bounds of the Constitution, and we are hopeful that the federal court will not grant them immunity in these cases.
Marcia Levick, good of you to be here, Marcia. Thank you. And just so our viewers know, we did try contacting Judge Ciavarella through his attorney. We were told, though, because of the pending criminal ruling in this case, and he's also obviously got some civil legal issues as well, that they would not be providing any sort of statement.